Well, we're coming to you live from Alexandria, Minnesota. Not to be confused with New York City. All right, so it's February 24th, 2022, and we have an agenda that is opening comments to 5 after, administrative items till 10 after, 15 after, through with review of efforts to date. And then 116 and 145 small group updates. Then we're going to do a quick review of the Global Excavation Conference presentation, and then way forward discussion, followed by Jeff's pitch to the assembled masses per the subsurface utility mapping strategy forum. Then we'll wrap it up and look at penciling in March 31st as our next event. And with that, Barb, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Steve, and thanks, everybody. Hopefully more folks find their way to the meeting today. And I just want to say that over the last month or two, we've made some progress. We've got another maybe a month and a half to 2 months to continue to really get some good accomplishments moving until the busy season hits. So as we listen today and plan, let's be sure that we make the most of these next couple months as we go forward. So that's those are my comments. And I'm going to send Dean. I don't see Dean. I was just thinking of it. I don't see Dean Parker on, so I'm going to send him. Oh, there he is. I see him on. Okay. Then Dean won't get a text. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Barb.
One quick note, I think maybe just for next time is that I was a little bit late. And one thing that I think would help, Steve, even though you've already done it for those who are more organized, but to send the invitation out, not just embedded in the agenda, but also in an Outlook invitation, if that can be done easily. Because I think a lot of people, if they're like me, they're relying on their Outlook, and all of a sudden I realized I didn't have it in my Outlook.
You know, I'm wondering, I thought I did, but perhaps I didn't. So I'll take a look at that, but I try within the, 5 to 6 days after when we meet to generate the next meeting with the attached CS file.
You did it. You had
okay.
it in there. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't always go through to people's email, to their calendars.
Yeah, Dean,
Yep.
I think I've got a transmission problem. I think since the banks and everybody on this side of the pond's gotten real worried about the Russian hacking thing, I think they've tightened things down. And because the email address is being generated as a proxy, they can't verify that in fact that I own mgacepc.org. And so there's a way for me to fix it, but I got to go in and do the technical pieces to make it happen. And I think that might clear up some of this. So anyway, I'm on it. All right. Out and about. Just got done talking to the Minnesota Society of Professional Surveyors. Had about 40 people in the room. Got good feedback. And as I indicated to some of you earlier on the call, looks like a follow-up invite to their summer planning event. So we'll see what comes of that. And then, of course, Barb and Travis on the road next week. And then Barb's still working up one to do with the Minnesota County of Engineering Group. On this part of the thing, Barb had asked that I kind of do a quick walkthrough because it's very apparent to me from being down in the trenches on this admin stuff that we have really come a very substantial distance in a short period of time. And I know it doesn't feel like that unless you're, what do I want to say, working on this every minute of every day or whatever, but the reality is everyone is critical in this effort from the standpoint of providing insights, perspectives from being in the field or having some experience at a utility or whatever the case might be. So my hat's off to everybody. And sure, I'm just going to quickly walk through some slides. And the first two slides here were about the idea that we've come at this with kind of some overarching thoughts. One of them being is that number one, we've approached this whole situation from the perspective of thinking about things in terms of solutions, not problems. And the second kind of overarching element is the thought that we're not going to have something here that's flipping a light switch, going from one moment with, an archaic system, and the next, everything's working perfect. This is growing a tree. And as long as everybody understands that, it helps set the frame of reference that we're working on something that's going to take some time. So the generic plan going forward, we've been staying ahead of where we want to be on the profile with one exception. I've slipped a little bit on getting this improvement plan underway, but if you think about it, going from our first meeting in August of 2020, been able to stand up the project team, be able to get some pilot projects in place with Travis and what Joe have done, and then getting a YouTube channel up and posting the recordings of everything we're doing. So, I mean, right out of the gate, those are substantial things, really, if you think about it, going from nothing. And then we've been doing this research effort. We've been doing the piece of trying to work articles, working presentations, getting the improvement plan started. So 2021, 2022 are kind of blended together because that's kind of where we are. And then the IT prototype, Bob's working on one of three. Barb, as I just indicated, and Travis headed for our second round of major conference discussion, and the improvement plan released, and we're looking for pull-in feedback. And then through 2023, we'll continue to work on expanding as it makes sense, through Barb's guidance, what she wants to do on self-help. And we'll be looking to work towards, as we've already seen, people's interest in doing things for this effort voluntarily. And then regulatory as needed, and GIS maintenance, ultimately more accurate maps, ability to share data, safe excavation. And here you are, the YouTube channel, the outreach piece, both in the US, internationally, our effort to do presentations and articles, the legal piece that's been hammered in place, both with the ongoing discussions with Europe and Canada, the Clean Water Council support, the support from the Minnesota Geospatial Advisory Council, and now the support for the Minnesota Association, the Association of Minnesota Counties. So pilot project, we've seen that demo piece works as far as getting locator data into the OCC system. And we started out here. We'll talk about where we are now later with the blueprint for the future. And Bob's got, and his team have got the start of the build in place, to which, it's the Christmas tree. Now we can start to hang stuff on it. And the third kind of tenet throughout all this is we all realize the rocket is going to blow up on the launch pad. That's empowerment to be able to fail as we go through here, because we're going to have to push the edges on a lot of this stuff. And if Elon Musk can fail, so can we. So underground utilities improvement plan in place. And we just got to remember where we're headed, trying to get this stuff into the field. And the final last thought is, why are we doing all this? What's the ultimate return on investment? What's the value of a life? What's the value of disruption to commerce? What's the value of slowed construction? What's the value of damage to the environment? And what's the value of exposure to another big one like took place in St. Cloud, Minnesota? So there you have it. We're working towards that aviation standard of 0 accident rate. And, the background piece is Minnesota on average experiences 45 incidents of hitting underground infrastructure a year. How likely would you be to get on an airline that had 4,500 accidents a year? Not very likely. So That's what we should keep in mind. We want to drive this thing down as low as possible. And with that, group reports. There you go.
So Steve, no discussion on what you presented?
Well, here, if the door's wide open, go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Well, refresh my memory. Have we had the Elk River project presented here?
We have not.
That one slide you showed where the Glenwood project, and then I think the next slide, that project is now being done, and it addresses almost every one of those concerns. And the significance of that project, it's a MnDOT project, B, a City of Elk River project, and C, whatever that county is up there, it's in there. And they did total underground constructability review at the 30% plan stage. And so they saved, I don't want to throw out a number here, $10 million, pick a number, a large number. They saved 10 million and they shortened it up 1 year. That might be a project to bring into this group. The second thing I guess I would react to, you said 45 underground utility hits a year in Minnesota?
4,500.
Oh, yeah. Well, I thought I heard you say 45, and I was going to say, hell, we had that many hits a year in Minneapolis in 1 month. So
yeah, no.
Okay, I'm going back to okay.
We got it, Brad. We're good. All right. Anything else? I may have lost my headset.
No, we hear you.
Okay. Anybody else? Going once, going twice, gone. Which brings us to group reports. So last time we were together, the assigned homework was Fearsome 4, and here they are from last month. Hold a meeting of your active small group players. Review the tasking spreadsheet and develop your plan to tackle your group items on the spreadsheet. Commence work on the assigned items and brief your progress at our next large group meeting. And as always happens, the most sturdy of all get hit by the bus first. So Travis, under the bus you go.
You want to give me screen share ability?
I will do that.
Okay. Oh, where is it? All right, there it is. Okay, so we met on February 4th, and we went over some of the points that are on the Excel spreadsheet. And the first one, you wanted to determine the minimum standard to physically collect readings. And so we put down at least every 100 foot as a minimum standard. Of course, if the target deviates from the line, that you're tracing, if it starts to turn on you or even get deeper or shallower, you would want to take more readings, just like you would be drawing it out from point to point. You got to, make sure that you're taking more points, in turns. And so just like putting paint on the ground, make sure you're showing those turns. And then we went over Steve's list from last meeting, the big group meeting, of the locating the hierarchy of locating infrastructure, or what you could use to actually locate underground utilities. And I know you were going from, 1 through 10. I don't know if you're going from the most likely to the least likely or what, but this is our group 1 list down here. And of course, a receiver transmitter using the traditional electromagnetic fields to do your locating is by far the most proficient out of all of them. But then that's not the most accurate, of course. The visual and potholing under, hydrovacking is going to always be the most accurate, of course. So those two are on the top. And then we added in on number 3, metal detectors and looking at above ground attributes that clue you in on where stuff is running. And then as-built records. Not construction drawings, but as-built records. GPR, ground penetrating radar, is number 5. And satellite remote sensing, we threw that in there for you, Steve. And then IMU tracing And then last one, witching sticks. Those are the 8 we came up with, and we could probably take witching sticks off of there, but that's how we have our list. And then we moved on to the attributes that were most pertinent to collect when you're out there, and going off the list that was on the Excel spreadsheet somewhat, and just coming up with ones as locators for group 1, what would be the most important. And the first one is facility type, which the color code system helps single out that. You just put down what type of utility it is, and that will determine the color code on the ticket or on the map. And then along with abandoned, we need to designate abandoned. As for abandoned stuff, when we come across it, I know when we map it out, we always put it as a gray line or a black line of some sort, and label it as such. And then the next would be size, quantity, and facility type, maybe who it belongs to as well. A lot of these, you'll have multiple utilities in the same trench, and so on in that case, instead of having 6 lines on the map, maybe there was a way we could designate it as a joint berry of some sort. That's something to maybe think about in the future. I don't know if it's possible, but material type, and then depth, of course, is optional. It's nice to have a depth internally as a company, but to share that externally would be optional. Method of collection, did you do it with a locator? Did you do it just with, eyeballing it with above ground assets? And then GPS method of collection and your uncertainty level of the GPS. And so we have an idea of how it was collected, with what datum and such. All that's important stuff as well for down the road. And then I always put in other, whenever we're writing up attributes or a form of some sort, we have to put in other, because there's always something that you never think about that you want to add. So that's what we talked about. And so we made some progress to your Excel spreadsheet, and any feedback is welcome.
Thank you.
Travis, thanks. I had a question about what about above ground features that tie into these utilities?
Yeah, you would have to collect that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Travis, I got an interesting question asked of me today. They said, how deep do you plan on mapping the infrastructure?
As deep as it goes. What were they wanting as an answer for that? I mean, it's really, I know our receiver and transmitters can locate up to 100-foot deep. And a lot of your pipelines, they'll be going underneath the rivers at 30 feet, 40 feet deep under, and so it's possible.
Yeah. I told them, I said, I think, we're tussling with that, but I think to the degree of visualization, we're probably talking in the range of the depth to which an excavator would be able to operate. And so,
well, the deepest an operator's gone from me before after one of my locates was 49 feet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was a big hole, and it was shored up and everything was kosher, but I located at 49 foot, and he was determined to see if my locate was on or not. And it was on. Yeah, it was 49 feet deep. I went back there later. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And it just kind of needs to be, one more part of the elephant we just bit off.
Yeah, they just have to understand the deeper it is, the more likely you're going to have a larger tolerance. So within the first 10 feet, it might be 2.5%, but 10 to 20 feet, it will be 5 or 10%, and so on and so on. And so, but yeah, they should know that. But again, we're not going to be displaying depth anyway. They're supposed to always pothole down to the level that they're going, and if they don't find it, then they can see it through the hole, and that they should continue that process. I think we don't want to have them ignore that. So,
Travis, any discussion about does depth mean elevation or depth from surface?
Yeah, depth from the top of the utility. So if it's a 6-inch pipe, your magnetic field is always taking it to the center of the magnetic field, or we say center of pipe. So you take 3 inches off to give you the top of depth, or top of pipe depth. to the surface. And so the surface elevation is important to capture correctly too, because if you're locating, if you're mounting the GPS on a pole versus a locator, you have to put in an antenna height. So there, when you're starting to getting into altitude there and elevation, it's just a lot more. And beyond that, it's like projections. Are you saving in a mean sea level, geoidal height? There's just so many variables that people are always making mistakes. And by the time you translate it into the right datum, it's just all over the place. I'm sure Bob can attest to some of that, but you know, engineers do a pretty good job of collecting elevation, but when you're trying to map stuff out on the fly, especially when you're locating with the stuff that we do, we're not standing in one spot for 30 seconds. We're not standing there for more than 2 seconds, and you need to be able to get a real good elevation. You know, we're staying there just long enough to give us a lat and long, and that's why we just concentrate on that. And then they take the depth of cover and subtract that from whatever elevations of the ground is on their mapping system. And that's much more congruent and much more logical to do it that way than to try to collect it on site, because you're never going to get everything mapped if you stand there for as long as an engineer would stand there.
Got it. One bit of feedback or pushback that I was getting formally from certain facility operators is they didn't like the idea of you know, sharing depth information because surface level can change. So I wasn't
Absolutely.
respond to that. I was curious as to what others facility operators on the call may think.
Yeah, that's why we have it on there as optional. You'll collect it for the in-house stuff, but displaying that on the map, you're kind of opening yourself up.
Got it.
Thank you very much, Travis.
Yeah.
Great work. Thank you. Which I believe takes us over to Bob. Roberto, you here?
Sorry, I was muted. I need to share the screen, I think.
We can make that happen. I have technology.
Seeing that okay?
We see it.
Yep.
Cool. You're probably wondering why you're looking at a tractor. This is my pride and joy, one of my very recent machinery purchases. Problem is that it's got a blind spot, and especially at night. So that pile of wood over on the right are the stairs to my deck. I need my own HUD display. So I guess where I'm going with this is that everything we're working on is eventually going to lead into this whole 3D interface. And I did this at night. So, and the tractor is so big, I didn't even feel it. I mean, there wasn't even a bump. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I like the new steps that you have there.
Yeah, I gotta rebuild a new set this weekend. So you know, I got the assignment last time, and I was kind of somewhat. I'll just go out there and say irritated with the formality of the 4 things that we needed to do. But I have to admit to Steve, as I went through it, it all kind of came together because he gave me the topics to start from. So thanks, Steve, begrudgingly. So we split up our meetings. I've already gone through this a little bit in previous prior meetings, but we split up our meetings now. We're going to have 2 of them a month, first and last Fridays of the month. First one is going to be of the month is going to be focused on data and interoperability. And the last one of the month is going to be focused on the actual system and the application interface. So the actual programming aspects of it, the kind of behind the scenes aspects. So we just had a meeting last week, which counts as the first Friday one. I know it was a little late, but we were trying to crunch it in there, or I was trying to crunch it in there. So we did that. Moving over to the plan, early development aspects are largely iterative. So as far as where we can go with a plan, there's a lot of, at least early on, there's going to be stuff where we have to get certain pieces in place before we can go to the next step. So the idea here is that overall planning, at least at this early stage, we're gonna have to handle it kind of in smaller phases or tasks. And this was one of the little pushbacks that I was having for Steve. I was like, I don't want to get too crazy about trying to describe things or solve things early on, but it does make some sense to build a kind of a workflow frame to move by. So, you know, things that we have that we're able to target. So that kind of fell into place in my head anyway. So it's hard to move beyond each one of these individual phases, at least in the beginning, until we get this kind of some of the foundational aspects in place. We really need to have something for people to bounce their ideas off of. So moving from that over into the tasks, and these are in no particular order, these few right here are pretty well underway. So we've set up the initial service and infrastructure. We've got a development environment already running. We're well into the data harvesting, identifying participants for prototyping. There's more stuff coming actually since the last time I talked to all of you. Installation of the data set, harvesting connections, it's always going to be an ongoing thing. I mean, Steve's already alluded to that we're just, this is, you know, it's growing that tree kind of thing. It's going to just be an ongoing process for, you know, as far out as you can probably imagine. One of the pieces that's kind of gelled in the setup of things is this is basically becoming the catalog. Everything here, I'm running it by the color coding mechanism here. This will be the end catalog that we're shooting for doing all of our ticketing against, as far as GIS layers and how that all works. So the catalog that you're looking at here, basically all those titles, they're going to end up as WFS, WMS service catalog listing titles when we're all done. So you'll be able to get at all of these different layers. Now, the ones with the question marks there, they're a question mark in my mind only, or at least so far. The reference stuff is basically anything above ground. So all that termination stuff that Travis was kind of mentioning and a couple of the questions were. From my perspective, it was like, it made sense to put some of the reference stuff where you have above ground infrastructure that terminates at the end of something underground. So it gives you a good reference point to see where things are underground, or at least where they're ending anyway. And then the top one is the survey stuff. I'm not sure exactly how that would fit into any one of the other colors. But I think this is going to be another discussion point moving forward. But that's where I'm ending up putting in like the survey monuments and those kinds of things that are worried about things moving while somebody's out there digging.
Yeah, can I just give you a suggestion, Bob, if you go back one?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, just go back to your color thing. So a survey is pink. In the color
Yeah, I know they got
code.
that magenta, but I always thought about that as a construction mark. I never thought about it as a marking mark. That's one of those pieces.
Yeah, so I'd just be careful of using white, because that's where the excavation area is usually marked in white, and if we go that way. And then I do think we should do something for abandoned facilities. Travis just mentioned he was doing gray.
Yeah, I kind of want to stick with the same colors myself,
Yeah.
but use dashed lines. I think there's a little bit more of a conversation there.
Okay, that's just what I was thinking. And then the communication is more of an orange. I'm just giving you some feedback right off the bat. So
Yeah, no problem.
Not to get too nitpicky, but thank you.
No, that's the more the merrier. Still on this tasks, you know, still not in order either. The next pieces, the major pieces that we're starting to talk about now is how we're going to do the ticketing request process. So I've got samples from the GSOC system already. We need to kind of develop that requesting structure and then decide on the engineering versus GSOC kind of digger side of things, if they need to be separated or one ticketing mechanism can work, that kind of thing. And then, you know, the layout of how the response looks, you know, list known data owners for ticket request areas, all that kind of stuff. And then plan for, what I want to do is in the same form that you get for your report, you're going to have mechanisms to report data discrepancies for each layer. It's kind of where I'm angling it, but the idea is that you'll have everything you need in your original ticket to be able to pass the information back. So everything will be there in that ticket as far as whatever you will need to pass the information back upstream. I don't know if that's going to work, but that's kind of the plan.
So Bob, what do you need from GSOC for this, the dig area? Do I need to push them a little bit? Adam's not on the call today.
Yeah, not
but-
yet. I did already got some samples of GSOC tickets. If from the perspective of development, we can actually use the examples kind of to put some preliminary requests together. But once we get that mechanism working and we actually get some kind of a report coming out, we'll want to actually try and figure out a way of connecting it up automatically to a current ticket. And actually run it all the way through the GSOC system in some kind of testing form. So that's down the ways though. This is just to show, kind of where we're at with the data, the connection endpoints. Everything with the green along the left column there has been installed into the interface. Haven't really had a heck of a lot of time in the last couple of weeks to go and attack the ones that are still pending. But we've got endpoints for everything that's on this list right now. I just need to, go through and actually do the styling and set up the maps inside of the interface. We're going to get some other information too for the sewer drains and stuff from Glencoe City. I'll talk about that a little bit here as I move forward. As far as the progress, data harvesting is continuing. We're still waiting on some additional data from Glencoe City. They're going to start putting some stuff out with their new GIS system that they're building. And then we're going to start, like I say, designing these elements for the reporting. That's going to be our next meeting here that we're going to be having. That's going to be the focus of that.
Did you get the MnDOT information?
Yeah, the MnDOT stuff is in there.
Okay, I didn't see it on that sheet that you had. Okay.
Yeah, it comes up as all of the stuff that's got the GSOC in it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then on, related to the progress, it's kind of interesting how this is kind of falling out, but we started out with the Glencoe City project area as kind of our prototype area. Paul T has sent me some stuff around the Lexington area in St. Paul that he has an interest in kind of focusing on. And he wants to focus on it more from the field side of things. I mean, he can flesh that out, his thoughts there a little bit more if you want him to. And then I noticed that he's on the call. And then we also have Wabasha downtown that is coming on next spring. And engineering from our side at the city here is interested in kind of using that project as a technology demonstrator. I've been actually pushing that along for the project. It started a couple of years ago, actually. So where I'm going with this is I think I'm going to just throw out the idea there that we need to have probably more than one prototype project going at a time because we have different focus points. So the Glencoe City area one is kind of almost a catch-all in trying to make the basics work. Lexington is could be focused on that kind of the field aspects and how that all works outside in the field. And the Wabasha one is basically like an end-to-end engineering aspect one. So the engineering requesting focus can be applied to the Wabasha one because that's just getting ready to start this spring. So that's all I've got. Any questions?
That's a lot, Bob. Thank you. I do have one question for you. Obviously, one of the things we're interested in doing here is, as was the case with Travis's effort, is to be bringing in live data from the field during locates for the purposes of, if you will, the most current understanding of where stuff is buried, blah, blah, blah. That to me implies that for those kinds of elements, we're going to need some sort of indication, some sort of symbology that indicates that's coming in from a live feed. And I think in the demo that was done, the dashed line was used. And so there needs to be some thought given to the line attribute displays and that it's just not an either or that you kind of previously described with, we'll use the solid line for, what's currently there and the dashed line, for your other use. I'm just trying to get across the idea and taking too much time to do it, but there's potentially going to be the need for other types of ways in which a gas line or a water line is displayed to indicate different function of that.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of that kind of stuff rolling around in the back of my head about how that styling is going to occur. The way that it's going to work from, sorry about the background noise. I got electricians working in the house. The idea generally is that you're going to have to handle where stuff is existing, basically the way the mapping systems now work. You're going to have to handle abandoned. You're going to have to handle like all of the stuff coming back in through the field. And in another piece of it that I haven't heard too much about is how do we handle accuracy of the line positionally. And I've got some ideas about handling that with a halo effect. So the idea would be behind these lines, you're going to have a halo effect that's going to reflect the distance of accuracy that the data owners suppose it is. So this is beyond and separate from where the actual limits of digging are, but it gives people a uncertainty level or a certainty level about how well the data is positioned. So those are the kinds of pieces that I've been pondering in the back of my head.
Hey, Steve, Brad here. Let me go back to the ALF River project. The more I think about that, this is really one to bring to the attention of this group. The data is stored actually in GeoMoose, which is one of the tools that you're talking about using here. B, it's located quite accurately, the underground accuracy. C, they did a constructability review. D, I'm running out of letters here, but they brought data in actually from the MnDOT database, and then they did the high accurate underground locate survey. And then when they're done with construction, they're going to push the data right back out to the MnDOT and the Elk River and the county utility database, so they can talk about the accuracy they've done there. There are 60 miles of underground utilities in this 3-mile project, and so almost every issue that we've talked about in the last 2 presentations are going to be dealt with. There's one more wild card here. The firm that did the engineering firm that did that work has actually got an excellent GIS group. And so they would be key players here. And then the last thing is that that same group is now doing a project at least that large up in Moorhead. So, there would be another opportunity to bounce some of these ideas off that design group and that GIS group. Just a couple of thoughts here.
You have
I'll
a
go back to
contact,
mute.
set of contacts that we can use for that?
We got a lot of contacts. We can talk about that. Well, again, there are a lot of, I don't want to be too flippant. There are a lot of players on that project. So, I mean, my suggestion is, quite honestly, think about bringing them in to do a presentation. We've had, well, Barb, you know who the group is, because when you were at the APWA meeting, that was Peter Muehlbach, who was presenting that project. He was the first presenter that day at APWA. He didn't get into all these other issues that we're talking about, but and then it's his firm. I mean, the firm that he works for, WSB, is the firm. So again, we got a lot of contacts here, and this might lead to every one of these ideas that you talked about. They've either dealt with those issues or maybe have a comment about them.
Okay. We did have Terry Halcomb from MnDOT speak to us on December 16th.
Right. I saw that speech,
Good.
but
Yeah, good.
actually the gal that did the MnDOT, Trisha, I can't say her last name right now. Trish, she did all the stuff with their asset management system over on the MnDOT side. So she brought the data in, et cetera. So either one of those people would be great on this project. So I like to line them up for additional presentations. So I think we've got about 10 additional presentations they're going to be doing. So, okay.
Hey, Brett, thank you for the input, and I've got it jotted down, and we'll bat it around and figure out how we want to proceed. So thanks, appreciate that.
I could if you wanted me to. I mean, I'd have to get permission from the companies we do it for, but I mean, I know we do more mapping and stuff than WSB, and but I would have to, we pretty much have mapped the whole state of Iowa and Nebraska and several others. but I would have to, and it would be helpful, I think, if I showed you what those actually look like, but I can't do that without getting the permission from the utility companies we've done it for.
Right, but again, I'm talking high accuracy. They did underground conflict analysis at the 30%
Underground, so
design stage.
they did other utilities that just didn't belong to the utility that they were doing the contract work for. It was for underground.
Every utility,
Engineering.
60 miles of underground utilities on that project.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to, yeah, I'm, okay. I mean, if it's everything, we have this, yeah, I've got some, I think I could come up with some customers if you want to look at everything too. So, and that are up in Minnesota, and get those on there as well. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, even the pilot program people, I think we have a lot of info from it as well. So I just know we have a lot of people involved in this pilot program, including people that are in the pilot that have maybe some of that same information, Brad. That's why I'm thinking I just don't want WSB, when they not having been involved, when they've been asked to get involved with this a long time ago, to come in and grandstand on top of others. So that's the only thing I've
Well, no, again, this is an engineering project. That's what I'm referring to. I just mentioned as a sidelight the whole GIS aspect of it.
Yeah.
This is an engineering design, and so a contractor has already been involved again at the 30% design stage, and so they've already shortened up their project by one construction year, and then I think a $10 million saving. It's about $150 to $200 million project.
So that they can, locators come out there and mark and paint and flag everything, and then they had an engineering.
It's all been done.
out.
Yeah. The high accuracy 3D underground locates have all been done.
Okay.
You know, potholing, etc.
Yeah. And then they followed up with the engineers that shot everything in, and then they had stuff from the road and the curb and all that stuff shot in as well.
Everything is 3D. It's the first totally electronic 3D plan done by MnDOT.
Okay.
All of the utilities, all of the properties, the property relocation, for example, all of that conflict has been identified ahead of time. The rebars and all the bridges, for example. So it is a fully 3D engineered plan.
It's a beautiful painting, basically.
It's not a painting. This is how it's.
Well, that's what I call it when I see beautiful GIS. I'm like, it's like a painting. It's like somebody spent a long time on something.
It's an engineering project. It's not a GIS project.
Yeah. It's just, it's beautiful to look at. Yeah. If you like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd be interested, I guess, to see what the end result looked like.
Well, it's being built, so you can go out and check it out.
And Brad, that presentation was a good one that he gave, now that you're reminding me, right?
Okay, moving right along.
Steve, I have a question for Bob. So Bob, one of the things that we talked about last month was I'd like to go start talking to various utility companies with prototypes, and when do you think I could be able to do that? We get the Gopher State One Call maps, notification area put in there. We have some WFS pull live. Is that, I guess I'm asking what your timeline is.
It's kind of hard to be sure. There's not a lot of work that needs to be done. It's more in digging out the time for the people to do it.
Okay.
I would hope with, like I said, you asked me this question before, and the bigger deal from the prototype perspective is that we need to get that requesting piece done. So we need to have some kind of a report starting to pop out so people got something to bounce their ideas off of. That's the big major next piece that I need to figure out. So, how that, it's not even really all of that complicated to do. It's just a kind of a time sink to get it, from one end to the other. So, I know I'm not answering your question. I would say in the next month, but I might be going a little out on a limb saying that.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start kind of what I call socializing this concept and this idea and what we're doing with the utility companies when we're ready.
Well, the mapping side of it is ready to go, but I really think you'd be way better off waiting until we have a mechanism where you can actually do a request right through you know.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And we
Yep.
could show it live.
Even
Right.
even if it's really coarse, once
Mhm.
once that part of it's done, it'll just get improved, you know, over time.
Okay. Well, I'm waiting with bated breath to be able to start showing this. So thank you, Bob. Yeah, thanks for all the
Okay.
progress.
Hey, Bob, are you doing that through WFS or how are you putting it all together?
Yeah, the service structure will be WFS. So we've decided that in our last meeting, that everybody was okay with WFS. We're probably by default going to have a WMS available as well, but to make things work the way we need it to, we're going to have it use a WFS as a service structure. So.
And so that's what your prototype is. It's exactly a working document.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
The whole back end of it is all going to be the way GeoMoose works right now is it works with OGC compliant requesting. So when you do any kind of identify on anything, it's a WFS recall, and all of the mapping display stuff is WMSs. So that's already built in. It's just exposing it as a catalog is the piece that we can already do it. It's already there. I just have
that was just relative to what Steve brought up about locate. So if a guy goes out there and does the locate within the two-day frame, you know, that will automatically appear, you know, on the ticket. So
yeah, as long as we can figure out a way of making it into a published data set, you know, wherever that is from, we can connect it up.
Yeah, there should be a layer in that Glencoe map that for actual locates, live locates. So
yeah, I've got a couple of questions for you about a couple of those things too. There was some other layers in there that I had questions for you about. I just haven't gotten back to you on them.
Yeah, okay. I might have to go to them and ask what it is too. So
okay.
And I guess that's why I was asking what help you needed from Adam at OCC to be sure that their WFS is all set up to pull the excavation area. Right.
The stuff I had questions on was kind of optional stuff.
Okay.
At least in my mind, it was real quickly. It's depth point, tile line, and open and close points. I'm assuming those are some kind of underground thing, but I wasn't sure.
yeah, the depth point is the locate. So as they're taking depth points every 50 foot or whatever, those are the actual depths coming in. But there could be other stuff in those depth points, but that's what's creating the line. So there should be another one just for the locate line. And really, if depth points or depth was optional, you wouldn't even turn that on. They would just use the line to display through the WFS.
Right. So I figured it was something along those lines, but then it's like, okay, depth point of what, you know, that kind of thing. So that's where I stopped.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Test 1, 2.
We hear you.
Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion for Bob? We're running a little long, but obviously we're making some progress. Sounds like, Bob, you need to have a conversation with Travis to clean the elements of unknown data up with him, and we can talk more next Tuesday night on how to push this forward at a quicker pace. So, yeah. Okay.
And I'll reach out to Adam to be sure we're doing whatever we need to do at OCC.
Thank you. Okay. I just put up this slide for the purposes of just a reminder, DP Pro publication schedule. Barb raised her hand in the leadership meeting and said she'd want to pencil something to try to, you know, support that need in September for the magazine that lands in late November. We do have members on this call who had signed up to be on the outreach function. And I'm wondering, Barb, if we can get some folks to stick up their hand and maybe help you with that. So like Troy, I'm thinking you're part of the outreach group, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'd be glad to help, Barb.
Oh, great. Thanks, Troy.
So excellent. Thank you very much. I think that moves us on. Does anybody have anything more for outreach? We, by default, pulled it back to the leadership team to handle it for the time being. And then it brings us to regulations and security. Mr. Dean, you want to drive the screen or do you just want to yap?
I can share a screen.
Okay. So while Dean's messing around with that, I'll tell a story that this morning I came to the startling realization that I'd become a Zoom zombie. I had the
What's
issue.
that?
The issue is of standing in front of real people delivering a real presentation. I went, man, this is not like the comfy of my bunny slippers. and reiterating something I've done 8 million times online. So a little different. So Dean, are you gonna make things happen or?
Boy, all right. With that, I have finally found my mute button. Oh, what a train wreck. All right, can you see a screen now?
We got us. You're good. You're good, sir.
Wow, what a mess. Well, in any event, fortunately, the subgroup is not quite as much of a mess as its chair, but we've been working on the data sharing agreements. We put together a confidentiality agreement already, which can be used for requesting data shares for Bob's prototype. So that's in place if we need it. And now we're on to creating the framework for actual data sharing agreements. And then hopefully once we get these frameworks somewhat refined, then I can go and have someone actually start drafting some contracts for people to look at. But in brief, we've been getting real good feedback from some of the people on this call, as well as others. And we've got 2 outlines so far, one for the end users, and we're just treating that generically so far. Although there's some thought that maybe eventually that breaks down into separate types of users, such as designers and excavators. Maybe that becomes, or locators, maybe that becomes a separate agreement for each type. But for right now, we're just contemplating a single end user agreement. People are very concerned that it not be viewed as a substitute for the one call law or compliance or the locate process. So we're going to be sure to highlight that at the front end of the document. And second is that it'll have a limited purpose, that it's going to be underground damage prevention only and for this project in question only. A lot of concerns about creating databases that then get used for commercial purposes that are not directly involved with damage prevention for a particular project. And so we're going to have to make sure that that's limited. Only permitted trained users. So the notion of only permitted use and only by authorized users will be incorporated. The license is going to be revocable. And some thought that service can be suspended immediately if there's a perceived issue that needs to be dealt with. Again, there's freedom to do this because at least at the initial stage, it's not a substitute for 216D, but it simply augments it. And then finally, requirements for confidentiality and releases of liability. Let's see. I knew this was too easy. Then a second type of agreement for the facility operators. We're going to make it very clear that in our model, the facility operator retains control over its data, because we know that's been a hot button issue from the very inception of discussion about data sharing. The notification center will provide some kind of a mechanism to be worked out by Bob and Adam. So the fusion view, I guess we'll call it for the time being. But they'll provide the mechanism and a base map upon which the facility operator may overlay its data. And again, we'll be reciting that it's limited use again, for underground damage prevention purposes only, and only with respect to a specific real project. And finally, at least implied right now, is the right of a facility operator to suspend sharing data should it wish to do so for any reason or no reason. And again, I think that's felt as appropriate in the front end to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to obtain buy-in. So that's it with regard to the data sharing agreements. On the task list, we've also got other, what I call phase 2 items. We're going to have to determine design and size limits for the bounding box, and we've come up with a few different ideas. One is maybe it'll be the current GSOC buffer. Some other thoughts, maybe 100 meters. As I'm looking at the NUAR United Kingdom documents, I see that their definitions provide for a radius point of 250 meters. And if you're doing a box, it can be no larger than 500 meters by 500 meters, and they control it that way. So there's a lot of different ways to think about it. And I'll be anxious to get some feedback from some of our subject matter experts who have a lot of experience in this and maybe have some better ideas than I do. Also volume and size limitations, and then the question of how long can or should a end user be able to store and retain that data. So lots of questions to be worked out yet, and really we're hoping to pull again more information from some of the other groups and their subject matter experts. So any questions?
Any thought on how you would enforce somebody, if somebody abused their, I'm just thinking that the excavator is going to end up looking at the map, redrawing what he sees, and using that as a future reference for everything he does on the job from that point on, because his locates are always late. How would we enforce that?
That's a really good question. I think it'll be pretty evident from the language that we'll put in the arrangement that if an excavator does that and there's an error in those drawings and they don't correctly reflect the actual location of the infrastructure, and there's a hit, that excavator is going to be at fault. That's going to be very clear.
Or even if he doesn't hit something, I mean, he's circumventing the one call process, so he doesn't have to wait for relocates.
So if you're, so it would really be the same as right now. If somebody, ran off, the ticket is valid for 14 days, and if they never call in another ticket, but they've somehow preserved the marks, or they've taken pictures and they think they know where the stuff is, and they just keep digging illegally, they're in violation. Now, nothing ever happens given the workload of MinOps unless there's a complaint.
So it would be MinOps that would be issuing the fines?
Yes.
Penalties? Okay.
Yes, because it would, it would be a violation of the existing one call law, because they aren't calling in for a regular locate like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And this system augments but does not replace 216D. So you still have to make the call or submit the ticket on the web. You still have to wait for the locates.
Yeah.
If the locates are late, you still have to wait and work with the facility operator to get things located. But if you circumvent 216D using this data, you're at the same measure of risk, at least in my view, as if you did it now without this.
Yeah, we're just at this point in juncture that the risk versus reward right now, the excavators are locating their own stuff and not even waiting for locates anymore. So this is just one more door to open for them to help them out, and they may circumvent it even more. So if MinOps isn't proficient at sending out penalties, then they're going to get even more overwhelmed.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, there were 900,000 excavations in the state
Yeah.
last year, and MinOps can't, you know, review every one of them. It's just not practical. But to your point, I think one thing that you suggested that I think did have some traction internally here among the group is that even if this information is provided, when is it provided?
Yeah,
And
2 days
I think
after the
the thought
ticket.
is,
Yeah.
if you wait until the legal start time on the ticket, at least you've given the facility operators, you know, the opportunity to mark within the legal time. And, you know, then what happens if you're late? Well, you know, we've still got some risk there, and maybe we are increasing the risk to a facility operator who's going to be late, that we provided this information and that an excavator just says the hell with it and goes ahead.
Yeah.
I keep getting back to my basic tenet that this system is not going to necessarily be for everybody. It's going to be for the trusted excavator, the trusted designer, the employed locator, and what is trusted? Trusted is where there's a relationship between facility operator and locator, so that they know that, or a facility operator and excavator, so that they've got a good feeling that the excavator is not going to go out and do what you say, or if they do, that the facility operator stops sharing going forward.
So you think this whole thing will be exclusive, and they have to earn the right to be able to use this, or is
Well,
it?
I think in a volunteer system, at least initially, while we get this thing going, what facility operator is going to want to participate unless that's how it works? And then hopefully you can get enough traction in this that people start using it the way they're supposed to. The maps improve, and at some point, you know, maybe the system will be good enough so that it becomes the 216D system.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're a long way away from that. And I don't know how we get there from here unless we start having the system used. And I don't know how we start getting it used unless it's going to be just by people that you trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah, that
wondering,
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, Dean.
the flag I'll run up is the one that Scott Landy's is always a favorite of: training.
Yes.
They're perhaps the gatekeeper on this is that you've had to complete a profile of training to be able to use the system, to be certified in it. So thank you, Dean. Does anybody have anything else for Dean? Going once, going twice. Dean, the last thing I'm going to do is pop up the slide for next Monday.
Mhm.
And so have you sent ahead your question list to these guys?
No, but I'm typing it right now to send out to the group here.
Okay, well,
So that'll be out this afternoon.
you mean this group right here?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And,
All right.
was NUAR expecting that we were going to send them a list of questions in advance, or is this just an informal discussion?
No, I don't think they were expecting anything specifically. Nothing was
Okay.
promised. But, you know, you're going to have a deputy super duper on this call.
Right.
So I think it would be really good. It would be worthwhile to be prepared for it. One question, one thing, Dean, you might want to mention, I think, which is a big thing in the UK, is cap on liabilities.
Yes, I saw that they've provided for that, and that is a question that I had for them is, you know, what kinds of discussions are they having? It's
The liabilities is always the elephant in the room. I know, you know this better than I do.
right, and our situation is a little bit different than theirs, because their OS is collecting data. They are the repository, and then they are sharing the data. But OS, as I understand it, is in control of the database. And the way.
Well, I think it's the same thing. I think the data itself, the custodians of all the data are the utility owners.
Okay.
Right, they're the custodians, right? And all the OS system does is, provide access to that data. But
Okay, so then maybe they're doing it maybe they're doing it the same way we are.
I think it's very similar to what you're doing. I think the
Okay.
big difference from what you're doing is what's going on in Colorado, where they're basically building a new database.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have agreements with the utilities or and anything else like that. So the other big question I would think that really needs to be a big thing, which I'm not sure the newer guys have really thought this through, and that is, what's the motivation for a utility to improve the quality of their data? You can talk to people in the industry, which says that that the utility operators are not motivated in any way. In fact, just the opposite, to improve the quality of their data. So, I mean, that could be a real liability of a system like Newer.
I think that at least the major facility operators in Minnesota, at least the ones I've talked to, are now pretty attuned to the notion that if they had a better command of where their infrastructure was and was not, that they would be saving money, particularly the ones that are involved in outsourcing their locates to contract locators, because most of the cost is a base price per locate.
Yeah.
If they know where their stuff is and they can clear a particular inquiry before it gets to the contract locator, they're saving a good deal of money.
Good. Well, I hope they realize that the economic advantages of knowing where things are.
Yes, I mean, I don't know that was always the case, but I think that people are tuned in now. And the big issue was, in order to gain any kind of confidence about where their existing stuff was, and even where new things were going in, it used to be quite expensive to develop those maps. But because of all the work that people here are doing and the additional technology, that cost is now on a curve that's moving downward rapidly. And
Absolutely.
So the whole calculus about whether to do something or not do something is changing.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. In the UK, as you know, I'm sure, the utility, the whole Newer system is based on the cooperation of the utility operators. That they really are going to take this seriously, try to do something. It started with Northumbrian Water, and I know Northumbrian Water is very serious about improving the quality of their data, but they have other motivations because they get charged with fines for leaks and things like that.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? We're running way long, but I think what we're doing is we're moving ahead to open discussion and doing it as a function of the reports out. So this has all been good. So thank you very much. I think that Barb, moves it over to you. So I'll give you the way to drive the machine, and you're going to talk about the conference presentation. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll get off of mute and I'll share this. Oh, I don't want that. Okay. So what Travis and I are presenting at the Infrastructure Resources Global Excavation Summit next week, next Thursday afternoon. And it's basically the presentation that we did in October. We updated a few things. One is the Fusion View is using the new system that was put together. So I'll show you that. And then we also have some new maps that were put together with Bob in terms of how the system can be viewed and pulling in various utilities. So I'm going to be covering my part that was done in October. Steve did it, and then at the end, the liability and agreement section. So Travis and I aren't gonna go and talk through this, but I just wanted to show you what we're presenting. And then I will have this videotaped. I talked to the videographer today, so he's all set. And Travis recommended this from the last time. So we will have this on tape, everybody, and we'll be able to.
I did find a source that videotaped the one down in Orlando.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, secretly
Videotaped it. He kind of brought it up in conversation. I'm like, oh, so you got a video, huh? Can you share that with me? He's like, well, I'll see if I can find it. I'm like, oh, so
Yeah.
somebody was peeking.
Okay, well, we'll have it officially taped, and because we did have requests for it, so I will do that. And then I'm not going to go through all these, but again, when we talked with CGA and also the excavation, we go back to the CGA next practices initiative, and really one of the 4 opportunities is GIS based maps to get accurate maps. And I'm just going to go through this. High quality map, sharing of the data, viewing of the data, a safer excavation, who's involved, and then why were we formed, what's the mission. Everything is available today. Point number 2 is really key. Technology is no longer an issue, preventing secure vetting, sharing, or viewing of data. It's really how do we work together to make that happen. And then the mission statement, Steve just went through this, the planning, managing, locating, and security and legal. And then Travis, I'm just going to go through Travis's slides. Again, we've seen this. Travis has given this. I just show you the new ones that were put together. And so this is the most recent view of the Fusion version 4.2. And I think this does a really good job of going from a data request at GSOC, taking that excavation entity, putting it into the system, and then pulling the utility information, putting it in that bounding box, letting people see it, be it an engineering team at the bottom left, be it a locate team, or a excavation team. And then how do you cycle back if you find a discrepancy from the locate team, for example? How do you get that information back to the facility operator? So Travis, this is the new system, and you've seen this to talk through in your presentation. But again, this is just wanted this whole group to see this. Utility workers, excavators. Again, this has not changed. This was the map that we showed last time. The green box is the GSOC excavation notification area, and then the utilities that were mapped, and then the next one that were pulled in, sorry. And then the next one, oops, I gotta go through this. Takes a bit. Whoops, let me go back one. Oh, I guess I have to let it run. I won't show that. And then this is the one of 2 slides that Bob put together. So this is, and I won't say the city's name, but this is the city of Glencoe. And this is utilities. It looks like it's electric and gas that have been pulled in from the utilities themselves in the Glencoe area. And then it's zoomed in even further to show that real time, this is what it would look like if you viewed the map, be it a designer, locator, or a construction, or a excavator, and then you can zoom into the area that you're digging. So if you're only digging in this area, again, your bounding box might only be this big. But for this example, we showed a bigger area just to highlight what it was. But for a excavation entity or locating, we'd pull a very small bounding box. And then the legal security and regulatory issues, this was not changed as well. So there's no laws, the standards, guidelines, data suppliers, the platforms. And then I just keep going through this. So, and then they asked us to do some of these things. So, so any comments or ideas or feedback? I think the things we wanted to stress were the new things as well. The fusion view and the 2 pictures where you're actually pulling in the data real time with the city of Glencoe, and then highlighting that if you were actually doing an excavation or a design, you'd pull it in, and the bounding box would only cover a small area. And there'll be new people at this conference that hadn't heard us at the last one.
And you don't want to say that it's Glencoe, Minnesota?
You can say it. I'm not sure they want us to say that. They didn't say no, but
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
yeah.
You have the
I
Latin long on those maps anyway, so if anybody was curious, they could just put in the Latin long. But
Yeah, I just say it's a city in Minnesota. Just keep it generic, but it's it's real.
Barb, those last screenshots that I sent you last week, the newer ones,
Mhm.
they're a little bit more readable as far as the legend on the left side. I tweaked the styling on stuff on the legend output, so you might want to think about swapping those in for the pictures that you've got there.
Yeah, and I did put those into a version. I do have that version saved as well. This is the one I just grabbed right now. I'm not. What I'd have to do is I already sent it to infrastructure resources, so I just have to send them my updated one.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Bob. I did that. Yep. Let me be sure I get that to IR though.
I think
And
you're
then
ready to. I think you're ready to rock and roll.
Well, we'll see what kind of interest we get and what kind of feedback.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Barb. I think
Yep.
Between you and Travis, do a superb job. We'll, looking forward to it. All right. I guess I got to try to share a screen here again, huh? Give me a second.
I used that same presentation yesterday, so for the 1,200 people in the room, so it was a big one. Can't say
And
that
how
I
did-
did well, but it went
How
over
did-
well.
And then you get feedback, or people come up and talk
Yeah,
to
they
you?
came up afterwards, and a lot of the small locators and such. I mean, the nice thing about that safety summit like that, you actually get the people that are doing the work in the field, Adam.
Mhm.
It's just not management, and so they get the big eyes, and they're like, really, this is really cool. And ground swelling it is usually the best way to sell it too. So they go back to their offices and say, you know what we could actually do in the future here, So it just it helps build it from both directions. But it was yeah, I stumbled probably over the legal part at the end. I kind of cut that off.
Oh, that's just details.
Yeah, we were running short on time. We were running behind, but it was a good turnout.
Oh, excellent.
Any more on going twice? Okay, I assume you can wildly see my screen. Low resources. I may have to turn off my visual piece here. Give me a second, everybody. Yeah, I think that that will help us here. Sorry about that, but I'm out in the sticks here. Barb, could you just raise your hand if you can hear me clearly? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, 4 things on the way forward. We've already more or less beat up the open discussion. And Barb's kind of hit on the Fusion View, but I mean, it's kind of a laugh here. So we'll just go take a look at Fusion View here real quick. And time to check the Fusion View spaghetti. And what does that version, last time we were together, we are 3.1.1. And due to the great input that keeps coming in, people looking at the thing saying, hey, we can do better, we can do better, we can do better. So as Barb showed you, here's where we are right now with 4.2.1, and it's trying to sequence it in a way that is more of a flow versus a data loop, if you will, and to help describe what the elements are and how they can be used. So that's where we are now. And to the degree you want to send hate mail my direction that you want to do something else, I'll keep tweaking this thing, because as we all well know, the rocket's going to blow up on the launch pad. And this was just intended to be a reminder. Travis and his team have gone in. They've started doing some editing on the spreadsheet. Very helpful. And it's out there. All you got to do for the small group tasking spreadsheet, try to keep, things moving along. Make sure people realize there's plenty to do in your small group. You can take a look at the list. And if it isn't during the current build, you can look down the road and go, oh yeah, we'll need to resolve that. So, it's on a G drive. It's under the improvement plan, and everybody's got access to it. And so there it sits. And the next item up is gap analysis discussion. We kind of got, I want to say, I personally got blindsided by the thought of the engineering process review. What are the elements from an engineer's perspective that they have to get the sign off on before they can put a project into actual, the earth getting dug upon? And so, if you will, what I got thinking about is there a way for us to develop, if you will, a checklist on that one, so we know the proper data layers to be going out and looking for? And as I mentioned to some of the folks during the leadership meeting, I kind of got hit alongside the head when I did a presentation for a group of USGS folks, and they said, well, why aren't you guys taking a look at pulling in all of the data we've assembled over the years on what soil types and how far down deep they go and all the rest of that? So Bob's taking a look at that to see if there's a way to bring that in.
I already have it.
Yep.
I haven't put it in yet, but I've already got the data.
Yep. So there you go. Association of
It's just
Minnesota.
the Glencoe area. It's really dense for the whole state.
Okay. Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers, are they worth doing an outreach? I'm just using it as an example. Are there other groups out there we should be, like chatting with? Like, again, I had no idea about this MnDOT Summer Engineering Design Conference, and until I got hit alongside the head of that this afternoon. Do we need to bring the insurance people back to now that we've got a better sense of where we're headed and our feet on the ground, to loop them in? And then, of course, there was a opportunity at some point to go to a walk to or rather have a chat with the Legislative Water Commission with Director James Stark. So I just threw those up there as a way to prime the pump on the discussion of who else do we need to pull into the process, and where are the gaps in what we're currently doing. So
Yeah, I think design engineer, you had the engineering process review, but I think we need to talk to design engineers. So I've got I put the week after next, we're trying to meet with Brian Conley, you and I and Dean to work through that. So I do think we need to go get on that speaking circuit.
Any other thoughts?
I think one thing, Steve, you brought up insurance. You did ask one guy from AXA to come and talk about insurance, but I think there's two. I think there'd be two really interesting aspects to this insurance discussion. One is contractors. The other one is utility operators, owners. We were talking about motivation for people to do things. And I just don't know enough about what utility operators pay in insurance. But if that's something where they, by improving the quality of their data, could actually get their insurance premiums reduced, that could provide a major motivation for those guys to do something.
Jeff, that's a great point about the contractors. I never thought about that perspective of it. And we had previously had some discussion about the thought of the level of data that a utility was able to provide, maybe getting some sort of rating or whatever on it. But I would bet with contractors, again, to the degree that maybe there is a kind of circling back to that training thing that we had talked about on the legal end. If we could look at some sort of a certification program or whatever, with an enhanced reduction in insurance rate.
Yeah, exactly. They could be little things, but when you look at the margins that a lot of contractors have, any little bit off that, and I mentioned to you before that I heard, he probably mentioned it when we had the call with the guy from AXA, that a 25 to $40 million little contract shop could be paying $1 million in insurance. Anything they can get to reduce that would just go right to their bottom line, would be really attractive.
Good point. Thank you. I got it jotted down. Anything else out there? Santosh has been working real hard to get me lined up, and I apologize to you, Santosh. My schedule's been crazy lately, so we got to work on the stuff that you sent me on California, so we can take a look at that one. So I'll put that down on the list.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, don't everybody talk at once. But my tummy is growling for my mid-afternoon snack.
I just had a thought earlier, and I know it's not relative to your slide here, but this is one for Bob, I guess, in the one call ticket process. Since we're starting to use icons and getting these things to look like GIS maps, why not include some icons for the ticket, the type of ticket? Like if it's a water leak, have a water leaking, or an emergency because a cable, something's been hit, a certain icon for that. Yeah, I mean, it would just, I don't know. Picture says a
If there's
lot.
data available on the ticket for the type of
Yeah,
ticket.
yeah, it is. So you can pull in some of that data from the ticket and actually add certain things on a layer. And I think
I
it would,
need an icon to assign to each of the types.
yeah.
There's something that you know of that already exists for a symbol set for that?
I don't know if any of the ticket managers that are out there that you can subscribe to do that or not.
I hate blazing new trails.
Yeah. It'd really be cool to put things in perspective. Water leak in this front of this house, with the little icon showing it.
Okay,
You could check with Pelican. I'm sure Pelican has some.
I bet you somebody does.
Yeah.
what we used when we put together the Minnesota Situational Awareness Viewer was primarily there is a data set that has been created by NISJIC, which is the National NISJIC, no, I'm sorry, NAPSIC. And that set in 80% of the circumstances covered it. And if it didn't cover it, the default icon set that I was able to find actually belonged to the Department of Defense, because the Department of Defense, in needing to be capable of responding to a wide range of events, had created some fillers. So Bob, I can work with you on that. And in fact, if you go to mnsav.org, mnsav.org, and look at the metadata, I'm pretty certain there's a link, there's a description in there that describes where we got the icons from and the links to pull them directly. So go take a look at that, because I'm pretty sure there were things like explosion, which would, might work well for a pipe, gas pipeline, or, water turned on or whatever. Go take a look at it. Anything else? Oh,
Uh, just one question, probably it may be already covered on the list here on the gap analysis. From our previous month meeting, we were kind of thinking about making more better understanding on subsurface utility engineering investigations for the underground utilities. I don't know if that could be something has to be reviewed at some point, but Jeff has more better understanding on the SU initiatives that's been happening across other states.
Santos, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that again, please?
The SUE underground utility investigations, which is part of design phase of construction.
Yes. Okay.
So when you say engineering process review, I don't know if that falls in the same category.
Yeah, those,
Yeah.
those things, let me see, those things are, I think SU surveys are now mandated in Colorado. I think also in, I'm not sure about Montana, but I'll just mention that at the conference, at the SumSF conference in March, Phil Mace will be talking about ASCE 75, which relates specifically to as-built. In other words, it's a standard for as-built. But he will also be available if people want to talk about 38, which relates to really to SU surveys. The whole, the whole ASCE 38, which is going to be a new version, which will be out in this year, 3822, will relate specifically to SU surveys, which, like I said, they're also required in Ontario for certain projects, not on all projects, but for certain public projects, transit projects, broadband projects, and I think highway projects. And so it means that in Colorado, Ontario, and I think Montana, SU surveys are now mandatory. And the data that's captured there it's often, like, for example, in Colorado, the data that's captured in a SU survey is actually included in the Colorado DOT database as highly accurate data. So it's actually contributing to the development of a accurate database of underground infrastructure in Colorado.
Thank you, Jeff. And Santosh, I hate to do this to you, but can we kind of loop back to the several discussions that you've tried to connect with me on? Next week will be a lot better week for me, and so let's try to connect and get something done next week.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Last chance on gap analysis. Is there anything else we need to talk about here? Going once, going twice. Gone. Okay. Open discussion. Leave the floor open. Does anybody want to chime in with anything else that they're thinking about?
Steve, do you want me to talk about the conference in March?
I got a slide. You're up next, sir.
Okay, great.
We'll just leave this as open discussion right now.
Yeah, I think just Steve, as we want to talk to utility companies in Minnesota, the top 20, I think we need to just finish getting prepared to do that. I know that's on the top of my mind, is to start talking with them. So hopefully April, May, I can get out there and we can get a strategy to talk with those folks.
Okay. Barb is with Bob having an interface that achieves the bare minimum that the two of you were talking about, and the package of slides that have already kind of been pre-created, is there something additional that you think we could lean forward on to get ready for those discussions?
I think we've got the fusion view, we have Bob's part, we've got the intro. I would just want updated slides from Dean, because what Dean showed today is much more concrete. And I think that would add to the discussion, the whole viewing, the liability, the security. So I would just have to add that piece to it.
See, you got that, Dean, you're on the hook.
And we don't need it in this next month, but I think the progress that's been made there has been good to give the facility operators some good direction as to what we're thinking.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty then. Thank you. And I see the tasking, and I'll make sure everybody is tuned into that's where we need to go. With that, going once, going twice.
Steve, Santos has just reminded me, there's two other states that have mandated Sioux surveys, Pennsylvania and Massachusetts.
Okay.
So it seems to be a growing trend.
I'm scribbling. Got it. Thank you.
Pennsylvania actually did this a long time ago, I think like in 2002. So, but you know, back then what was defined as a Sioux survey was pretty perfunctory. With the 3822, it's going to be much better defined what you have to do a Sioux survey. But I think Massachusetts, I think it was just last year that they mandated it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So going once, going twice, gone, which takes us to the floor is yours, Mr. Jeff. There's your slide. The Subsurface Utility Mapping Strategy Forum, virtual, March 22, 23, and you are the chair.
Great. Thanks very much for the opportunity, Steve. You can see already this virtual. The other thing is free to attend. There's no, in other words, you don't have to pay anything to attend it. I'll mention there's probably going to be two main areas that we're going to be talking about. One is technology, remote sensing, subsurface remote sensing technology. There'll be a company talking about a modified backhoe for real-time damage prevention. There'll be a company talking about putting equipment on a drone so that you can actually do subsurface surveys using a drone. We'll have a company from New Zealand talking about augmented reality and data capture. And what's really, I think one of the really interesting things is a company that is applying machine learning to automate the recognition of utility stuff in the field. So that when you see a pedestal or you see a pipe or something like that, you don't have to bring out a piece of paper or you don't have to bring out your handheld and start tapping things in. You just sort of take a picture of it and you've got all the information you need. So that should really make it a lot more efficient to capture information about stuff in the field. That's on the technology side. On the policy side, you've probably heard of the DT-DIC system in France, which is the only system I know, damage prevention system I know in the world that is actually reducing the amount of damage, about 2% per year. So we're going to have Patrice Lemire telling us a little bit about the DT-DIC system in France. We have Victor Koo talking about the Singapore Land Authority. You may know that Singapore has been working for about 4 years on basically a subsurface digital twin, and they are just embarking on the implementation of that, and that will be multiple use cases, not just excavation damage prevention. As I mentioned before, Phil Mace will be talking about ASCE 75. We'll have somebody from Newer. So if you're interested more, in a bit more about the UK project, which we talk about every time on this call. There'll be somebody there talking about that. And then finally, for those folks who are interested in what's going on in Canada, we'll have a panel discussing the development of a subsurface digital twin for Canada. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect. Like I said, it's free for attendees.
I plan to be there. That's great. Thanks, Jeff.
Make it 2 at least. So you got two people attending, Jeff.
Fantastic. What a marketing job I just did. Right?
So an absolutely superb opportunity to get tuned into technologies and policies as they're evolving and with direct impact back on what we're doing here. Thank you so much, Jeff. You are a hard worker, and for you to do an event chair on an international, what is effectively an international event like that is no small deal. So my hat's off to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Okay, with that, I think we need some words from our fearless leader, and then I'll close us out with the last two slides.
Okay, then I think we had a good meeting today, good discussion, and thanks for everybody's hard work. So I just look forward to the progress for the next meeting. March 31st. Oh, I better put that on my calendar. Okay.
Okie doke. So with that, the homework is now we're going to go with the terrific. I was torn between labeling it the terrible or the terrific 3. So by the next time we meet, hold a meeting of your active small group players, continue to work discussing items from the tasking spreadsheet and executing your plan for the year. And 3, brief your progress at our next large group meeting. So I put daylight savings time on there to trigger the thought that spring is on its way, although it doesn't seem like it because I'm looking out the window in Alexandria, Minnesota, with snow piles that are about 20 feet high. And it's, I don't know, was minus 15 when I checked in last night. But the point is, we're only 2 weeks and 3 days away from daylight savings time. And then anybody that lives in the cold northern tier knows that when it hits 50 for the first time, it's the swoon of, oh, it's warming up. It's pretty nice out here. So I'm trying to relate all of that to drive the thought that the window's starting to close on us getting work done, because we all know that when summer rolls around, for a variety of reasons, it gets really tough to do that. So Barb's already pointed it out. March 31st is next time we're going to meet. And I went the wrong direction. And your closing thought is, the harder you work, the luckier you get, according to Gary Player. So with that, thanks everybody for a great meeting. And I think that's it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thanks.
great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.